Girls on Tour is a book club that aims to keep us connected while shining a light on some badass women and gender diverse people within the entertainment industry. Touring can be incredibly boring and sometimes very isolating. Having stories to connect over can make us feel close no matter how far apart we are. It's February.
It is. It is.
And is thus technically the first book club. I don't know why I said technically. For you guys, it's the first one. And this is the first book. If you are here because you are rereading this book because the next one just came out, welcome. If you've only just discovered this book exists, you're welcome.
We did that for you.
This is the Girls on Tour book club. This is what we're going to do. We're going to have a little chat. We're going to read some books. We're going to cry. We're going to scream.
We're going to giggle. We're going to kick our feet.
Oh my God, we will. The kicking of the feet. This really beautiful thing is happening currently in my workplace where 4 or 5 people are reading the same book. And we've had like a rough schedule over the last couple of weeks. And usually when that happens in a touring and a theatre and a just high intensity workplace, and all workplaces really, usually when the schedule is shit and you're all overtired, that's when cracks start to show and people start bickering about dumb shit because they're bored and they're tired. We've had none of that this time because all of us are reading. So instead of getting annoyed at each other for little things, we're instead being like, there's like a friend's TikTok meme. It's like when you and your friend are reading the same book and it's like, do you know something? Because I might know something. I might know something. Do you know something? It's very much that where we're like, okay, where are you up to? If we find out that somebody's up to the same point, we're like, about a thing. And it's been very beautiful and bonding. In the workplace, that's beautiful, but then also at a distance, that is a beautiful experience to have. And that is why book club is a thing. I've always wanted to be part of a book club, but the schedule of my work does not allow that. I'm never in the same city for more than like 2 months. So so having a book club that is online and has those travelable, that's not a word, is now.
It is now. You're welcome. Dictionary.
Elements is, I think, really beneficial for some people. And it also creates a connection even at a distance that is very good for the brain. It's very good for the soul because when you're touring a job, it's so consuming. You basically live in your job. And to be able to talk to people, whether they're people I work with or people back home who are reading the same book about something that's not work is the literal best feeling in the world.
So much. And it's even for those of us who aren't touring, not having to go to a physical place to discuss a book is the most delicious thing in the world. I hate the idea of entering into a room full of 20 to 30 people that I've never met before and having to talk about a book. That's hideous. Cannot be me. No, thank you. What if my tummy hurts that day and then I miss out? It's nice to have something that is a digital space that we can all come together and like just giggle and be like,
our feet.
I love it.
So that's what the book club was made for. It was made for connection. It was made for kicking our feet. It was made for having something on our brains other than work.
And real life.
And the absolute bin fire that is the state of the world right now.
Who are we? Who are you?
My name is Monique. I just said by name. My name is Monique. If you are here, you potentially maybe are somebody who watches my YouTube channel or watches me stream or knows me in the human flesh, which, bold. I often think about the perception of me in person as opposed to what people see online because I am completely unmasked when I'm recording videos in the comfort of my own home. And then I think about myself at work when I overthink how many times people walk past me in the hallway and whether I was obligated to say something. And I'm like, fuck. But anyway, my name is Monique. I make YouTube videos around my work, which is in the entertainment industry. I have been a tech, specifically mostly in sound, really winging it in lighting for a lot of my career for the last like 10 years plus. I've worked in fringe festivals, comedy festivals, I've managed small venues and tech directed other venues, and I've now been working for the last couple of years in professional commercial theatre in Australia. Big shows, big budget, big schedule. I've really used reading as a crutch to kind of anchor me to myself while being in those spaces and to just have some kind of a break because it can be very all-consuming. Currently, I am on tour with the Tina Turner musical.
And now me. My name is Bryony, but please call me B or BB because it's weird when people use my full name. I'm so sorry. And usually people say it wrong anyway. So just BB is cool.
What is your instructional way to teach people how to pronounce your name?
Thank you so much for asking.
Is it Brian?
I have a few options. When, this is a tangent for a second, Americans could not say Bryony for the life of them. I had a name tag and underneath my name tag, I phonetically wrote out how to say my name. Bry and then knee, but I spelt it like BRI and then KNEE, like a knee, which is the Australian way of saying it. But there's, you know, a more traditional Celtic Welsh way of saying it that's way better than this accent could do.
I have that for my name as well, though. Like, if I was to phonetically spell my name, it's like Meneek.
Yeah.
Monique. So gross.
They would say like brownie, or someone called me Barney once. Anyway, it's a whole thing. But my name is Bryony, BB for short. I am a marriage celebrant. I also have 10 years of theatre experience, and I am a big book nerd. And I think that's one of the reasons why I'm here, because I like very similar books to you. We are the same type of person in that way. I'm a fantasy hoe. Here it is.
I think it's interesting that so many women in like our generation that are currently in their like 20s, 30s, we all love the same kind of books. A little bit of deviation, but I have never ever met a 20 or 30-year-old woman who's reading James Patterson.
Because no offense to James Patterson readers, but why are you doing that? Why would you put yourself through more horrible, boring things when the world is already horrible and boring?
Like, we all, to some degree, we're either loving a fantasy book to some degree or trashy fiction romance. This month's book is Divine Rivals by Rebecca Ross. First of all, I actually really prefer our covers. The more that I look at them, I prefer our covers.
Okay, and I remember when you showed me this cover and I'd seen the American cover and I had no idea what the books were about. And I was like, the American cover is so pretty. It shows exactly what's going on. So sorry to American people. And do you know, have you noticed that a lot of Australian covers will have faces on it? It's like we can't connect until there's a face. If you think about the old Throne of Glass series, faces, but now they've changed them,
and they're ugly. I'm glad I have the old ones. Sorry about it. I have never done a reread of the Throne of Glass series or anything. I think if I reread it now, I don't know how much I would like. I remember being balls to the wall for that book, being like, oh my God, this is the most incredible thing I've ever read. It's consumed my life. I'm not sure it would consume me now.
But did you read Throne of Glass first and then Court of Thorns and Roses?
Yes.
Yeah, same with me. Whereas other people who have read Court of Thorns and Roses first and then Throne of Glass, they struggle to get through Throne of Glass. Throne of Glass, I will stand that book series forever because it was a real fantasy. It had more of like a traditional fantasy energy.
I feel like Sarah J. Maas wrote the same story twice. Like, I love them. I love them.
The ACOTAR girlies are in their things going, how fucking dare you? I would write at dawn. We can have different opinions.
Very similar to the way that Cassandra Clare's stories are all like a little bit similar. It's the same formula.
Yeah.
Brooding original love interest that turns out to be a cunt, spoiler. And then like the actual golden tier, the snarky one with no emotions who falls in love, like that vibe. The formula is the same. AC/DC didn't change the formula because it worked. So why should Sarah J. Maas is all I'm saying. They're both great series. Throne of Glass series, I feel like is it's for the people who are there for the fantasy.
Yes.
It's for the people who are there for the world building and the blah, blah, blah. That's why it's so fucking long. And Court of Thorns and Roses, she put her thing down, flipped it and reversed it and just made it sexy and short.
Yes.
Yeah. Divine Rivals. What's Divine Rivals about? Divine Rivals. This was pitched to me and it came into my sphere because I kept seeing TikToks of people being like, my favorite books this year, Fourth Wing was my second favorite book, and then this was my favorite. And I was like, intriguing. Wow. Let me put it in my brain.
Why do you say this?
I totally get it. I think it's because reading them was the same experience of like chewing through it. Like, I could not put it down. I think it's the attachment to the characters. Such good characters, and you become so emotionally attached to them. It's probably a trauma bond. Let's be real, because they suffer in such aggressive ways, or they have such like traumatic backstories that you're like, I must protect this.
Let's just have one good moment together.
You get so attached to their moments of happiness because you're like, fuck, you deserve it.
The way I cried so many times in this book. My God.
Spoiler-free vibes. We follow Iris.
Iris Winnow.
What a sick name. And she lives with her mother, who is an alcoholic, and her brother has been... Did he get conscripted or did he choose to go?
He chose to go.
Her brother has gone off to fight in a war. And she is a journalist who's just started working for a certain newspaper in the town. And she and this other guy are fighting for a permanent position at the paper. They hate each other, but he's hot. And we all know.
Yeah, baby. Yeah, baby.
They hate each other and he's hot. This is a good enemies to lovers. Not in the way that most enemies to lovers in contemporary is they're shit cunts and you ignore it eventually because you want to fuck them. They're not enemies. They're two people who both desperately want the same thing and they happen to be fighting for the same position, which is real. She has a old typewriter and this wardrobe that she used to share with her brother. And because her brother's been away and she can't get letters to him because she has no idea where he is in the war, she has been just like typing out all these letters and throwing the letters into the wardrobe, and they disappear. And then one day she gets a reply. And that's all I'm going to say, because I literally can't say anything else without spoiling it for you.
If we keep going, we will spoil every single moment of this book.
I don't want to spoil it. I just want to know everyone's feelings as they noticed. I want it in the Fable immediately. Thank you.
Spoilers done.
Get out of here. Good eve, friends. When I first entered the entertainment industry as a tech, I often found that I had to let go of parts of myself as a feminine person in order to have space within the industry. And I felt like everywhere I went, I had to prove myself even harder than most of the other people who were in that space. I started making content around working in the entertainment industry in order to demystify and empower other people, especially young women and gender diverse people entering an industry that often hasn't had a lot of space for us. I create informative and entertaining, I hope, content around working in the entertainment industry, around the different kind of jobs that I've gotten, how I get them, and the lifestyle of touring and working in this industry, especially as a young woman. There will also be another part of Book Club that goes live on that channel. The non-fiction part of Book Club, which is aimed towards shining a light on women and gender diverse people within the entertainment industry, while reading a really cool book about some other badass people in the industry, will go live on my Monique Tech YouTube channel. You can find me on all the socials. You can find all of those socials and my website through the Girls on Tour Book Club. First of all, I'm so sorry for making you read this book, for giving you this heartbreak.
Let me just say for a hot second, and I was sending you videos. I finished it yesterday. I was distraught all afternoon. It's so beautifully written, but I do agree that I think it's because of the characters that you are so invested. Because I think I am one of those people where I enjoy world building, but if there's too much world building, I absolutely couldn't care less. Whereas I think this also, it was really simple world building because it had quite a modern vibe, even with the magic elements. Yeah. It lends itself to like what we already know about history.
Yeah. I kind of forgot that this was a fantasy book to a degree
like, oh, there's a god.
Until they go into the big discussion about like the gods, and then I was like, hold on, this is fantasy. It just is so real.
Yeah.
The way that is their world, it doesn't seem, you know, when you read some fantasies and you're like, wow, this is a book, or you have to be like, it's magic, you fuck, who cares, and like move on. It's so believable. The world is so sure of itself.
Because it's London during the Blitz. Like, let's be real. But instead of like two like warring countries or whatever, it's two warring gods, which is sick as hell. But what I was going to say about the enemies to lovers of it all, we've discussed enemies to lovers, but I don't know if we've discussed enemies to lovers yet. It is the better version of enemies to lovers because, okay, this is me just theorizing for a second. People love enemies to lovers for multiple reasons. But I feel like the way that this works so well as enemies to lovers is they're technically not enemies. It's just that they know all of the bad parts about each other first, and then they still fall in love, which is, I think, why people love enemies to lovers so much, is because you want someone to know the worst parts of you and still be like, I'm going to choose you anyway.
I think one of their biggest conflicts as well as people, it's nothing they can control. That's the difference between a toxic enemies to lovers and an enemies to lovers that isn't. Contemporary enemies to lovers, where they're just shit people who don't get along and don't like each other, put it in the bin, run away, get better friends who tell you to break up with him. Enemies to lovers that is like fantasy based, which it usually happens in fantasy, but it also does happen in other books, where it's the context of the eneminess is a situation you can't control. That is understandable and fair. And I think the first one for Iris and Roman is that he is wealthy. The difference in their social classes, because he has his own struggles in the fact that, you know, he may have everything, but he has so much pressure put on him to follow the family's legacy and blah, 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 and marry this random bitch who doesn't want to marry him
He
either.
doesn't have a lot of choice.
He doesn't have a lot of choice, and Iris doesn't have a lot of anything. Using candles in the house she lives in with her mum, where they have no food and her mum's an alcoholic, and
spending all of their money
on gambling and on booze if they get it, and she's just trying to stay afloat. So the first issue is that they come from completely different worlds, and that's what makes them enemies, at least in her eyes, because she's like, fuck this little rich boy. But at the same time, for him, which is not really discussed in the book, I'm sure him looking at her life, especially before he knows the context of the poverty she lives in, she can do do whatever she wants. For him, this job position is the only thing he's ever chosen for himself, and she could do whatever she wants. Everything else in his life has been set out for him and chosen for him.
Well, even this job, he didn't choose it for himself, because there's a part in it where he says he wanted to go and study literature.
Yes.
And his dad was like, no, you're going to use your skill here at this job because it's gonna make our name better. It's gonna better the family.
His dad's a cunt.
Yeah, his dad is the worst.
Oh, fuck with.
But I think what I love as well is because he comes from a very well-to-do family. It's new money, but it's like he's rich. But even he has prejudices that are just ingrained in his brain. There are moments when he finds out that Iris didn't finish school, and he's like, oh, well, she didn't finish school.
Did you ever think about why?
Yeah, and then he does figure out why, and he's like, oh, I am the worst person ever. Just because it's been told to you that you need to do X, Y, and Z to be better and la la la, doesn't mean that that's the way. And he internalizes that and he goes, okay, now I can see her from a better perspective.
And he even does a lot of that unlearning with the war, because his family are involved in the war and they're on the wrong side. As far as I'm concerned, the wrong side. Because when we actually get the story of Enver, I keep wanting to say Enya because we said Enya that one time. When we get the story of Enver and Dacre, it's so clear that he is awful, that he wanted to trap her and keep her and did all these awful things. And she was like, I'm going to manipulate you and fix the shit. She put all the gods to sleep. She put herself to sleep and was like, we are bad for the world. And then now he's fucking up. He's uppies. He's had his little nap. He's cranky. But because people are so ready when they learn the truth, which fucking the symbolism in this. Once people learn the truth about the situation and about her position in the conflict, they want to fight for her. Whereas he is like brainwash conscripting zombies.
It's so interesting that before we get to the front, Enver is thought about in that way by people who have nothing to do with the war. They just answered her song, they're brainwashed, la 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 la. And then everyone who has seen it and who has been to the front is like, oh no, I get it. Like Iris's friend who went to the front first, Addie, she came back and she's like, I absolutely get it. I see why they're all fighting. The two gods, they're very Hades and Persephone's energy, but like the traditional tale of him stealing her into the underworld.
Not the current
Not the one
smut
that we
revolutions.
love.
The current smut evolutions where he is just like the grumpy man who only has a soft spot for her personified, which is my favorite.
Which I will like slap my credit card down for every single time.
Every time. Give me a man with a soft spot for only one person who's secretly actually really kind but hates everybody.
I hate everyone but you. Yeah, you do. The moment that we find out that Roman is the person in the cupboard, when I tell you, I screamed. I scrimped. You don't know it's him, and then you read, Roman was reading in bed when the paper arrived.
I love this man. I would ride at dawn for this man because we love a morally grey character. Like we were just saying, shitty guy with a soft spot for only one person. We love a morally grey character. But you know what we also love? A morally good character. Just like a good person who's in shitty situations, who does not challenge our feelings about who he is as a person at any time. Because even when he gets the first letter, he's like, I shouldn't be reading this. This isn't for me. He has a huge conflict about it, and about the fact that when he writes back, he doesn't tell her about his identity, even though he knows it's her. Like, he has conflict about those things. When it comes down to making choices about doing the right thing, he fucking does the right thing.
Every time.
Every time. I do not picture him to look like this, by the way. In my soul, his hair comes at least to his shoulders. This man, no chest hair.
He's 19. Whereas in my head, he's 20-something.
As a child, I never thought I would love chest hair, but here we are.
I distinctly remember, like, I think I was talking to, like, my mom or, like, one of my mom's friends or something, and they were talking about, like, a famous person that they liked. And I was like, ugh, he's so old. Like, how could you? But now I'm like, oh, he's in his 40s? Delicious. So what do you imagine him to look like?
Matt Tuck in the Waking the Demon video.
Wow. 16-year-old me is screaming in this moment, but in like a crisp linen shirt.
The way that I had this cut out and on all of my school books for years.
And that is how I know that we were meant to be, is what I'm saying, because literally same.
Basically no sex in this book.
And let's talk about that for a second, because as a avid smut reader and myself, I usually, when I read books, I hate when they do and then they close the door.
You know
Next
why
chapter.
I hate it? Part of me feels like it's lazy writing. Realistically, some people are trying to have a teenage book or blah, 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 and they don't want to include explicit scenes, but it gives me the same vibe as an adult reader who's okay reading it. It gives me the vibe of like, and it was all a dream. Just write fact that they kissed him, you could write descriptions of flowers and not even talk about what they're actually doing, and that would pass.
This, like Divine Rivals, Rebecca Ross does it so well that it's not that she's talking around it. She says that the lights turn off so neither of them can see, so we can't see. And it's just them like touching each other in the dark. Oh my God, that is the most pure scene ever. And they just got married, and I want to talk about the wedding for a minute because, oh my God, if you missed it at the start, I'm a celebrant. So I see people get married all the time. And can I just say, this is like probably the most beautiful wedding scene I've seen in a book in quite some time. Getting married in like matching jumpsuits that you just have to wear them with little flower crowns in your hair, rings that you got from your like surrogate mother that you live with. Oh my God. If someone just called me up tomorrow, I was like, hey Brandy, we're gonna get married in our garden in our pajamas. Can you be there? I'd be like, absolutely, I can be there. Weddings are so, in the day and age that we live in, weddings are so expensive. They're big and extravagant, and if you want that, and I love that for you. I had a big wedding.
And I'm using this opportunity to include photos of your wedding. Thank you so much.
There are parts of me that say that I would do it differently now because there are things that I care about more now. If it was just close family and friends in someone's backyard, I would love that shit. Weddings they're an industry now when they should go back to just getting married to the person you love before the war happens.
I think that's the beauty of this moment and why it kicked you in your heart so much, because especially being someone who works with weddings, as soon as you say it's for a wedding, the price tag of something goes up by multiple grand. It's fucking wild. It's so easy for getting married to become about everybody else instead of the two people actually getting married. So there's something really beautiful about eloping, basically. Getting married actually just being about the two of you wanting to make a commitment to each other.
The amount of couples that I've spoken to, people who find out I'm a celebrant and then they talk about whatever. I'm like, what do you want to do for your ceremony? And they go, oh, I don't know. What does everyone else do? Oh, I'm sorry. Are you everyone else? That's so crazy. It's about you. They've got ideas of what they want to do for the reception and photos and la la la. And that's because that's deemed as the fun part. The ceremony
is literally what this is for.
It's what it's for.
The after is to celebrate the this.
Exactly. The amount of people that are like, oh, we'll just pick whatever song, and I will not. You will pick it, and it will mean everything to you.
If I hear one person shrug and say You're Beautiful by James Blunt to me one more time, I'm going to throw myself off a bridge.
They pick songs that mean nothing. And this is not my couples. My couples are amazing. You're amazing. I see on TikTok all the time, like couples just pick songs because they think other people will like it. Absolutely not. But also, if you want to get married to a song that has nothing to do with love, I love that shit. Yeah. If it's the first song you ever listen to while you're sitting in the car eating Macca's, like watching whatever, I don't care.
It has more meaning than just picking a random romantic song. Like, I would rather see you get married to Bat Out of Hell.
Okay, actually, yes. Call me right now. So if you want to walk down the aisle to Bat Out of Hell, it doesn't even need to be the instrumental. We're doing like the full lyrics down the aisle. I'm there.
You really need to figure out like an elopement package. People can call you at like any random time, at any random place, and just get married.
In Australia, you need to sign a notice of intended marriage, which is at least...
Yeah.
We're going to talk about it. In America, where we see a lot of movies and stuff where you see weddings on the screen, you can just get married.
You can just get married.
You can just get married. So shotgun weddings are a thing, right? Whereas in Australia, no. The Australian government wants you to have a little think. Have a little think and is this correct?
We're sick of filing a divorce paperwork, so can you fucking think about it, please?
So you have to go to either the registry office or your celebrant and say, hi there, I have this paperwork filled out. It is called the Notice of Intended Marriage and it has all of our information on it. Can you please sign it? I will sign it. Everything is right. And that means that you are officially intending to marriage.
How long does that have to be before you get married?
Between 18 months to a month. So a lot of people try and do it like at least 6 months before. Some people can do it a month before, but that can get a little crazy.
I have so much admiration for the quick wedding havers of the world, because to pull a wedding together in 6 months?
A big wedding in 6 months? You could do an elopement in 6 months. You could do an elopement in a month. But a big wedding in under 6 months is craziness. And pop off to you. I have to hold on to paperwork after the wedding for 6 years. If I die, my husband, who is my next of kin, has to still keep those for 6 months and he has to be available because say that they want to have like an annulment or a divorce, something happens at the registry office and stuff goes missing.
Huge.
I keep the original copies because then that's like they are legitimately married. The paper trail is very, very important with like all that kind of stuff. And it's even when you were signing the notice of intended marriage, you have to put your parents' names who are on your birth certificate. Say it's your mum. You put her birth name, then you have to put her current name, and that could be completely different. There's so many things you have to go through in Australia to actually get married, but once all that paperwork is signed, you hit me up.
No, it'd be fun to do the documentation of like the intent to get married and then have it as like a at any time you could call the wedding to happen.
It's a surprise for everyone but me. They just give me authority to just call them up at like 12 o'clock on the full moon. And I'm like, meet me at this cemetery. I took a photo of the vows that they said to each other because they were so simple and so beautiful. My little celebrant heart was just like, screaming.
Also, vows have got to be hard. Even when I think about if Ty and I were to exchange vows today on this very day, I can simply not shut the fuck up.
If you want to talk, talk. And if you don't want to talk, don't talk. I even had a couple that said their vows not in front of everyone. They said them to each other before they arrived at the ceremony. Delicious. Yeah. And then we just did the legal stuff. I just wanted to talk about Iris for a hot little second. So often in the books that we read, the female main character, or MC.
That took way too
long. I know
long.
It did, and I want to die.
I'm leaving it
actually. My brain went, you don't know words.
I really confidently before said D and F and then was like, do not finish. In my mind later, so it's fine.
It is so often in these books that the FMC, thank you, is sassy, bold, doesn't give a shit, holds no prisoners.
Always does her thing,
Has been so traumatized by the world that she is hard as nails, basically.
Or has so many privileges in weird ways that make her like above the rules.
Exactly. And I'm so used to that, but it was such a breath of fresh air reading this book. And Iris is so gentle. She is kind. She thinks about how others feel
even in the
herself.
Face of shithouse life.
And you know what? To the detriment of herself in some moments. And the people pleaser in all of us is screaming. She lets her mum just get away with so much because she's like, oh, I see that you are also traumatized in the same way that I am traumatized.
But also, I feel like she is a really perfect example of women behaving the way that they were socialized. She looks after her mum, she takes all the responsibility for those things, which like in those situations it's hard because you're like, well, obviously, what else am I going to do? Even though she is kind of like the ideal woman in society's eyes. She is kind, she is nurturing, all of the things. We start to see her.
She gets brave as shit.
She starts running, which couldn't be me.
Not me, ever in my life, thank you. The part where when Roman arrives from the train and he's walking through the field, and instead of like yelling and going, hey, and if he didn't hear her and she goes, okay, well, you're gonna die, she books it, bolts down this field. She's never run a day in her life at this point, and she tackles him to the ground in one of the most scariest situations.
But hard. And we're on top of each other. I was like, look, I know you're potentially about to die, but you could kiss a little.
You could just last little moment. It's so lovely to see that journey of her to literally go from this like meek little gentle thing to be like, no, I'm lifting soldiers who are wounded in battle onto a truck. Like I'm doing all this stuff. Even in that moment where she's trying to get Roman out of the trenches and it's just, he's saying, leave me. He's like, leave me behind. She has this moment, even to herself. It's like this epiphany to herself. Everything within her was fracturing under the weight of her fear. She had no idea how she was going to get Roman to safety, but in that split second of desperation, she clearly beheld what she wanted. It was him. I want a life with you. I want to do this with you. She finally made a choice for herself. It wasn't for anyone else. She was like, no, I want this. Like, you will be there, but I want it.
Would have loved that for her if she could do that before everyone she loved dies. But
you know what? We got to go through it.
It's really interesting to have a female main character who is, I think, more relatable for a lot of women, because I've always really resonated with the female main character who's going to do whatever she wants, even though society does not want her to be that way. But you know what that is? White privilege. I am a woman, but I'm also a white woman in a first world country, in a Western country, where I'm allowed all of these things that other women 20 years ago were not allowed, and in many parts of the world are still not afforded. That I'm a bad bitch, I can do whatever I want, independence does come from a place of privilege. It's really cool to see a main character who's not just like the chosen one who gets away with whatever she wants because she is special. She is a normal woman who is just trying to fucking get through it, and she bloody does. There's nothing overtly special about her other than who she grows to be by her own choices, and that's hot.
I wanted to say as well that in this book, the villains are like villains. Do you know what I mean? There's no one that I just hate because they're a piece of shit.
Except his dad.
Well, he's a villain to me as well.
It's real villains in the way that people aren't cruel for the sake of it being enjoyable. Everyone is trying to survive. Everybody is trying to come out on top of this fucking tragedy that's happening around them with something, and with their family alive and safe. Like even his dad, who is a big old cunt. even him, he's just trying to make sure that his family prosper because he's seeing everything around him like crumble and fall to pieces, and there's a war and they've only just come into wealth. It seems like it's not like old money, it's a new money family. He is just trying to preserve his family. His methods, iffy at best.
And like everyone around him is like, hey, that
Maybe
sucks.
And he's like, I'm gonna do it my way.
But also would you call it symbolism, or the you can tell me what this is. The fact that the dad was paramount in those bombs, the gas bombs, and they're the thing that his son ultimately was
I didn't even think about
died.
that. I'm crying.
His dad has been making all of these decisions for him his whole life, and he's going, this is going to better us, this is going to do this. Another decision that his dad makes is the reason his life ultimately, not that we really know, but ends crawling through the grass towards her.
Basically a zombie. Speaking of zombies, her brother is another example of real world villain, but not a villain.
But the way I wanted to, oh my God. If anyone deserved a swift punch in the face, it was him. And I get it, you're traumatized, but like,
so real. Like, we see the reflection of the real world in his character, in that people who come back from war don't have the same connection with their emotional side of themselves.
Because they had to turn it off.
Well, yeah, how the fuck do you survive through something like that without doing it? Like, that is unfathomable for my little pea brain. But him coming back and Iris being like, but my husband. He's like, fuck your husband. You need to live. I don't give a fuck about this, man. I want you to not die. And that is the extent to which he can show his love for her, instead of being like, tell me about your feelings, kicking my feet. Like, he can't do that. And considering everything he's seen, he's like, we're surviving. And this is how we survive. I'm not going to talk to you after we just went through a really traumatizing situation.
That whole section, even the part when she woke up to go grab wood or something and he was meant to be asleep, and then he's like, his eyes like pop open because he thinks that she's going to try and escape. And I'm like, King, she's not your prisoner. And I get that you've been through it, but like, stop it.
You're now not going through it as much. So be a little bit less of a cunt.
I'm not over at 4 meters. He was 4 meters away. 4 meters crawling through the fucking grass.
We all know how big 4 meters is, because if you've lived in a city apartment, it's usually the size of the biggest room in your house. That's how far away. Not very far.
When Matt got home after I read it, I was having this whole rant to him as well. And I was like, 4 meters, what's that? What's 4 meters? And he's like, oh, probably from like here to that wall. And I was like, that's to that wall.
A few big strides.
Yeah. I'll just cry about it later. Don't worry about it.
The characters in this book, the villains who are not really villains, all of the things, it's just so fucking well written. I will read a not well written book. I'm a Wattpad generation kid. Fuck me, some of the books
AO3
and
baby.
and the fan fiction, some of that shit that I read, people being kidnapped by band members, concerning at best. I will read a book that is written like absolute dog shit if the characters are great or the premise of the story is great. But sometimes you get this little treat in life, which is a great story, incredible characters, great world building,
and has been a few rounds of editing.
but also where the pace is delicious and consistent. The pace for me is what ruins books for me. Like, you can have the best ending of a book in the world, but if I get fucking bored before I get there, I'm never gonna know, because I'm gonna throw it into the sky and wish its death. The point in my life of freedom was when I realized I could put books down that I was bored in and move on to things that actually made me happy. I didn't have to finish it. I allowed myself to do it. I did it recently. I started reading Belladonna, and then I read Foxglove. Halfway through Foxglove, I put it down, which sucks because the covers are fucking beautiful.
And it makes
Holy
me
shit.
so sad because you trawled around to get
oh my
that
God,
first book.
I tried to find Belladonna. So it was out of stock everywhere when I decided I wanted to find it. I was like, fuck my life. But Belladonna was great. It was like cozy, spooky vibes. The main character's interesting because she really accepted a lot of things that you should not casually accept in your life. All these really big, bizarre things were happening, and she was like, I'm gonna roll with it, which we've all got to live at some level of delusion, but hers was quite wild.
The Delulu was Delulu.
Delulu. But the second one, I was like, okay, if I go a day without thinking about the book, I'm done. Because if I'm invested in a book, you will not see it leave my hands. One of the greatest things I love about my own brain, that sentence doesn't come out of me very often, let me tell you. Reading is the one thing that I have like real smug brain competence in. Firstly, because reading is like a massive privilege that not many people are actually taught to do. And people who can do it well, that is like a huge skill for you to have in your life. So I'm very grateful for the fact that I can read. But also, it's like my brain fractures when I'm reading a book that I love. People are always like, how do you read so fast? And it's partially because I read read fast, but also partially because at any point in the day, at any time, I can pick the book up and read 2 or 3 pages and put it back down. I remember exactly where it is, exactly what's happening. I'm using my other brain for life, and then I shut that brain down and I go into this brain. Like, it's always actively in the back of my mind, the book and where I'm up to. I'll get on the train and I'll read for like 5 minutes, and then that's it. I was shooketh when I realized that other people needed to like...
That's a skill.
They really need to like sit down and have no distractions. So if a book makes me bored, if I don't think about it for a day, when I have the world existing in the back of my mind at all times, get in the bin.
That's an insane skill and I love it. My only book reading skill is that I can walk and read at the same time. That I can be walking down a really busy street or in the middle of a shopping center when I can walk. When my back allows me to walk, I can be reading the words, but I can also be seeing everyone else around me at the same time. That's my only thing, and I really
could have used that when we were filming the announcement video. When we were just walking on flat ground, it was fine, but that whole staircase bit, I was like, fuck. I wasn't even reading. I was holding the book out a little bit and looking down at the stairs.
Those stairs are like that though. I was even walking looking and I was like, oh my God, I'm going to die.
I was very scared. I didn't think that one through at all.
But everyone will have seen that by now and they'll see how amazing it is.
And you know when I'm never going to get bored? When the protagonist is in love with this man.
Okay. Listen, stop the presses.
I'm active listening. I'm active listening.
The way this man literally threw away his entire life and everything else for her. He broke his engagement, which he didn't want in the first place, but he was willing to do for his family, quit his job that he had been vying for, which again, he not necessarily wanted, but he was, you know, had a work ethic, blah, blah, blah.
You know what he did? He started living the way he actually wanted to in pursuit of her, which is beautiful because it is about her and she was the catalyst for it, but all he did was the things he's wanted to do for himself, but he doesn't value his own happiness enough to do it for himself, which, whoa. Roman, baby sweet angel, can we have a chat? Yes, she was the catalyst to get there, but that's all the things he wanted to do for himself. He didn't want to be in that engagement. Yeah. He didn't want to be a journalist.
And the fact that he was willing to accept all of those things, but as soon as he figured out that she wasn't safe, then he was like, fuck everything else. I need to go and make sure she's safe, which I'm sure he went for romantic reasons as well. But what it feels like that he was there to ensure her safety.
And she ran for him.
Okay. Oh my God. All right. Sorry. This has just brainwaved me for a second. So apparently in the US, they get special edition books that have extra chapters. Luckily, the lovely people of Reddit also upload the thing so I can read it. There is an extra chapter from a Barnes & Noble, I don't care, whatever, of Roman getting off the train and coming to Avalon Bluff. Like it's his POV before he gets there. And it's literally his POV from when she's running. And he's like, oh my God, this is not how I thought it was going to go. And then he notices
the fear in her
eyes.
and
he's like, oh my God, this is really bad. Something's going to happen. Like, what's going on? He says, and she does the last thing I thought, and she pushes me to the ground and lays on top of me. And the whole time he's laying there underneath her, he's like, stay calm, stay calm, stay calm. Like, he's like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. And he ends up looking up at the sky where the ethereals were, and he starts to panic. And he's like, oh my God, my body wants to run. And then he realizes, no, look at her, like look at Iris. And he has this like, it's this really beautiful moment where he has this type of shame where he's like, I should be the one like shielding her, but ends up using her face as like, he's like, this is all that exists in the world. And I'm like, excuse me. It's the most beautiful thing ever. And it makes so much sense for him as a character because later on when they are at the front together, he literally shields her body because he's like, I will never let her do this again. Get you a man. We've got him, but get you a man that will go.
Or a woman.
Anybody on the earth.
First of all, that will run for you.
Crawl for you.
You know who I would run for?
Who? Literally no.
You?
Thank you so much. I would never make you do that.
That was what my pause was. I was like, you'd never make me run.
If you started running, I'd be like, beep, 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 beep.
We can meet.
I might be dying, but don't worry about it. I'll come to you.
If we meet halfway, we can both just walk.
I'll be like hobbling over.
In this chronically ill existence.
Not on your life, sir.
The way that she has like a fake polyamorous relationship with him as well had me kicking and screaming. The way she felt conflict and like guilty for having feelings for him while also having feelings for the guy in the letter, and it's the same bitch. I was like, ma'am.
And she even like has these conversations with herself where she's like, I love this about Roman, but then Carver is this and that and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, bitch, they're the same guy. That's wrapped up.
Towards the end, he wasn't hiding it. He was like dropping hints.
If a man is not letting you read a love letter, he's telling you something. And then the fact that he's like, get my bag, you need to get my bag. Because he was like, I wanted you to know it was me. Shut up.
The way as soon as he was like, you can't read that letter, I'd be so sus. Sit down, watch me read it, you bitch.
That's the time I'd be running. I'd be running away reading the letter. She's like, you can't fucking stop me, bitch. And I'm sorry, I just remembered this as well. He burst into tears when she was walking down the aisle in her little jumpsuit. And he was like, that's my fucking wife.
I have a lot of feelings about weddings. Most of them are to do with the fact that there are some men who bawl their eyes out or who are like very emotionally overwhelmed in that setting. Did Matt cry? I don't think Matt cried. I was too busy looking at you and crying, to be honest. So
we ensured that he didn't.
Okay.
Because he didn't want to. Not because he didn't want people to see him cry.
No, I feel this so severely. And I'm telling you this right now as my celebrant, I need you to please try and find ways to stop me crying because I'm a fucking ugly crier. My eyes go to shit. My makeup goes to shit. I'm dehydrated as fuck. I am a hideous crier. And then I will be self-conscious for the rest of the day.
Exactly.
And I'm going to feel like shit the next day because that happens to me and it sucks. And I'm so emotional. Yeah. So please, 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 please find ways to help me not cry on that day because I need to keep it together.
We intentionally met up, like we did a first look before the wedding. And I also intentionally, so he was standing like with his back turned to me. I was so in tune to his body language that I could see that his hands were shaking and he was not having a good time. And so I was like, whip out the speaker. And we played the thong song to release the tension. So he was like waiting for this moment where he would turn around and like bawl his eyes out and all this kind of stuff. But I instead played the thong song, brought levity to the moment, but then it also stopped him from crying during the ceremony. Did it stop me from crying during the ceremony?
Absolutely not.
Hey, it's me again. As you can probably tell, I love the hell out of a good story. Whether it's a book, a play, a movie, or even my best friends telling me their wildest dreams. I've seen so many ways to wed, and I love them all because your ceremony is the perfect place to have your story heard. So if you're looking for someone who won't focus too hard on tradition and will let your authentic self shine, I'm the celebrant for you. I can't wait to hear your love story and help you tell it. To get in touch or find out more, head to my website, www.loveburnscelebrancy.com.au, or my Instagram, loveburns.celebrancy. And all of that information will be available for you at Girls on Tour.
Because the end of this book was so soul-crushing, we are going to read the sequel next month. We were a bit hesitant to do sequels because if somebody hasn't read the first book and they jump into the book club, then they have to read a book. You understood what I was saying then. But I feel like I want to try it with this book because we can't make you read this book and then not give you the sequel that's just come out. We literally cannot. That would be fucking rude.
And you can't read the sequel alone. You need us there and we need you there.
The first thing we're going to do in book club is trauma bond together. And also I feel like book club is so new that we're all doing this together for the first time. If it was in like a couple of years when we've got a lot of people reading with us, then it might be more complicated because then they'd be like, well, I didn't want to read that one, blah, blah, blah.
And this is only a duology apparently.
So we can begin and close this chapter together. So we're using Fable, which if you go and watch the announcement video, I explain all about Fable in that and how we're going to use it. It's a really cool book club app, which is sick. The reason I wanted to use Fable is because in Fable, you will have the book and then you will have little clickable sections.
Like folders.
Yes, folders that take you to chapters or topics of your own choosing that you can label so that we can have like chapter 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, blah, 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 the amount of chapters there are in the book. So as soon as something happens, you can go into that chapter section and have a big vent cry.
And it doesn't ruin it
without it spoiling it for other people. And when you get up to it, you can read what other people have said and like you can go back and look at it and all of the things. But I'm also going to add one for a space where people can talk about the times that they kick their feet, like that moment. That doesn't even have to be full of spoilers. We can just put down what page it happened and we'll all go read it and we'll know. And then the same one for crying.
Me over here, I'm crying and everything. I'm just popping out them tears.
If you haven't already shared them, we need to hear your thoughts on this month's book. In order to have spoiler-free chats about the books that we're reading, we are using the book club app Fable. It's free, it's quick and easy to make an account and keep up to date with the Girls on Tour book club. There are 2 separate book clubs, one for the non-fiction book and one for the fiction books. Make sure you head over to our Instagram, TikTok and YouTube page at the start of every month to see what book is coming next. Thank you for listening and thank you for watching if you're watching this on YouTube.